the global warming crisis that exists. First, I want to say that in my 32 years as an engineer, nobody, no scientist or other engineer asked me what the consensus on anything was. They would ask me what the truth was. They would ask me what the facts were. They would never ask me what the consensus was. Because one scientist with the truth trumps the opinions and dogmas of the whole world. Now, injecting this idea, this political term of consensus into the scientific debate, is an open attack on the scientific method at the foundation of science itself. And they know it. We will not have science if science is done by consensus. So this is a bigger attack than just trying to steal some power in Washington. It's destroying science itself. Now I want to tell you about some of the consensus allegedly out there. This is a book, The Deniers, by Lawrence Solomon. Lawrence Solomon is a Canadian environmentalist. Started out believing we had a global warming crisis that we should act on. And on a bet from a friend, he started interviewing skeptical scientists for his newspaper column in the National Post. Remember, he's an environmentalist on the other side. The more he researched and met the prestigious, honorable, and ethical scientists who were the skeptics, the more deeply disturbed he became about how they were being demeaned, smeared, attacked, and their funding was being taken away from them, both private and governmental funding, because they refused to abide by the politically correct orthodoxy. So he honored these men in this book. I highly recommend you get that book. These are the top scientists in the world in a whole host of fields, and all of the facts are in there to rip the global warming crisis to shreds. Now I want to look at a few people from this book. This is Dr. Roy Spencer and John Christie. They've been working in their field 40 plus years. They are the fathers of the NASA's Satellite Global Temperature Measurement System, which is the only valid temperature measurements out there. For this astounding achievement that they did, they received the NASA Medal of Exceptional Scientific Achievement in 1991. These are top flight people. They are skeptics. Dr. Christie was a UN IPCC lead author in 2001. He's Alabama's state climatologist. So these are the men that we're talking about here. And you can see what they've discovered. Their satellite data showed that in fact in 1979, when satellites began flying, to 2000, we were increasing our global temperature by 0.12 degrees C per decade. That's a small number. In 100 years, that would give you 1.2 degrees C of warming, which is nothing. But from 2001 to 2009, what happened? Curve turned around, we started decreasing at 0.27 degrees C per decade. In about 30 or 40 years, we will be totally erased all the warming of the last century. This is the data that they gathered. Here, I'm going to put this down so we can actually talk about this a little. Here you can see on the left-hand side, this is the temperature readings from the satellites. When you average all those, it makes this zero line across here. So that's the average temperature from 79 to 2000. These are now the deviations off of that. There's that big 1998 El Nino in the southern Pacific. Nothing to do with CO2. Has to do with the fact the whole southern ocean of the Pacific turned warm. And over here on this axis, we have our parts per million of CO2 in the atmosphere. Has absolutely nothing to do with the temperature here. Doesn't explain the El Nino. The El Nino overrides the CO2. So that's what's going on with this chart. Also, one of the experts in the deniers, Dr. Bill Gray, 55 years as a professional. He's the father of hurricane storm forecasting. He says storms, tornadoes, hurricanes, they're not going to increase in frequency and intensity. Dr. Spencer agrees. Dr. Christie agrees. Here's his quote. This is dynamite. I am of the opinion that this global warming crisis is one of the greatest hoaxes ever perpetrated on the American people. Ditto. I say ditto. Agreed. Thank you. Agreeing with Dr. Gregg. Dr. Reed Bryson, father of climatology, first one to speculate and dismiss global warming crisis. Dr. Max Mayfield, director of the National Hurricane Center. Dr. Frederick Seitz, unfortunately deceased, President Emeritus of the National Academy of Science. These are all prestigious thinkers in climate science. Now I'm going to tackle that second item, the four science legs of the global warming crisis stool. The first one here is the corruption caused by money and power in Washington. Here's Frank's question being answered. $6 billion annually of tax money being spent on confirming the global warming crisis. $0 being spent for the skeptical scientists. That amounts to $300,000 bribe for 20,000 scientists to publish in the journals. Quite a hefty thing to overcome if you're on the other side. Second item, invalid surface station temperature data, and here I didn't include this on the handout. You may want to write down the name, meteorologist Dr. Anthony Watts. This man has single-handedly unearthed and disastrous information on how our surface temperatures are measured in the U.S. Here's his two sites. I'd write those down, surfacestations.org, what'supwiththat.org. And I'll detail this in just a minute. Then the third item, non-validated computer climate models. Dr. Vincent Gray, who's a physical chemist, PhD, 18 years on the IPCC as an expert reviewer. His book, The Greenhouse Delusions, shreds the computer climate models. I'll give you one example from it. We don't have time for everything. And the last thing is, of course, the series of alarmist lies, like Greenland's melting, polar bears are dying. We'll get into that. Here is now back to Dr. Watts' data on surface stations. This is Marysville, Washington. And you can see this little box here called an MMTS, maximum minimum temperature sensor, hiding in amongst this building, next to an hot asphalt parking lot, next to hot air conditioning exhaust fans. All of those are adding heat to that sensor so that its plot looks like what? Well, here's 1900, and we're climbing up and up and up and up as they add a building, they add a parking lot, they add air conditioners, and this is what's happening. That's called urbanization. That thing was probably out in the field like it's supposed to be. NASA and NOAA guidelines say that should be in the middle of the field, not even a tree line nearby. And all this urbanization is what's distorted this data. Now, how big a problem is that? Probably just one example. There aren't any others in the United States. Well, not quite. This is Dr. Watts' team's pie chart summary of all the stations they've surveyed. 800 out of 1,200 total. These are official U.S. stations. You can see that only the blue and the green wedge, 11% of the data, is less than 1 degree C of error on the warm side. The yellow, the orange, the red wedge, 89% of the data goes from greater than 1 degree, 2 degrees, 3, and up to greater than 5 degrees centigrade, warm on the warm side. You're not going to get any accurate information out of those. How bad is this across the country? Well, here it is. Remember, all the colors, the same colors are here for those stations. They're everywhere. Those stations have been swamped and overloaded with urbanization. They're all reading high, and that's where the myth comes from. One leg of the myth.